Yeah. Well, with that, I'm going to talk briefly on upcoming legislation, and is Steve Rector on with us, NU7B?
Yeah, and I've got some slides that you may be able to frame that against. I've got about 6 slides that sort of go through the chronology of like when the Chinese balloon was discovered until it's got a fairly good out. Yeah, so should I share my screen? I don't know if you've got slides.
Yeah, let me go through a few slides and then I'll hand it over to you, Steve.
Okay.
All right. So there's some of you who may be new to high altitude balloons, and then we're going to talk about how these new legislations may impact us. This is a typical latex balloon. We've got a balloon, a parachute, trackers on them. Sometimes the payloads can get very creative. This was one of the UAH payloads that actually his eyes would flash. Can you imagine finding this in your backyard? Not knowing what it was, or be a minion with flashing eyes. And we do things like fun things like simplex repeater. This is a parrot where you send a voice up, transmission up to it, records it for 20 seconds and repeats it. So it's a real quick relay that you can do to make a cross. It's a simple, just an HT and a little simplex repeater voice recorder. Radio Shack used to make a great one, but they don't make it anymore because there really isn't any Radio Shacks anymore. But Argent Data still makes a really nice unit that you can use with any HT and turn it into a balloon repeater. We had people talking over a 12-state area through this at altitude. Chase and recovery, that's part of the fun. A lot of you are very much into that part of it. This guy went whole hog. It's a Yaesu G5500 Azel rotor on top of his van, and 2 aero antennas for 2 meters and 70 centimeters. But he had to make sure the antennas were pointing horizontal to the plane, because if he went under an overpass, it could be bad. Now this one was taken at the GPSL that we held at Carlton's location there in Missouri, and just miracle upon miracle, 2 of the balloons tracked each other perfectly. We had the same exact lift. They were launched at the same time. They stayed within 200 feet of each other throughout the whole flight. And at 53,000 feet, Jeff Duplo and Zero NPQN took this amazing photograph with his automated camera. If the government had tried to do this, it would cost $1 million and they would fail. But that's the view when we're starting to get into the blackness of the space, and that thin blue haze there is the Earth's atmosphere. And this is the view from 85,000 feet. We did this at a outreach flight that the Space Harbor Club did many years ago from an elementary school here in Huntsville. And you can see 400 miles in all directions from about 100,000 feet. One of the students wanted to send up an Angry Bird because Angry Birds in space was the big game at the time. So we sent an Angry Bird up, and he was very angry. We also set up a live fishing crickets because the one of our students said, I read on the internet where crickets can hold their breath for 2 hours. Wow. Now, everything you read in the internet's true, right? Yeah. So we decided, well, these crickets are destined to be eaten by fish or geckos, so not a big deal if they don't survive. So we sent them up, and when we got them back, they all jumped out of my friend's front yard.
Yeah, we had angry birds and crickets that day.
So this rarely happens for the recovery. Nice open flat field, crops about 1 inch tall, just right next to the road where you go out and grab it. That happens all the time, right? Well, maybe in Colorado. Yeah. In my dreams. But this are the usual landing sites, particularly here in Alabama and Georgia. If there's a tree standing in a 1,000-acre field, it will find the tree. Guaranteed. I have a tree tracker on every flight I do. And of course, you know, the horses try to eat it, the cows try to eat it, or we land on an apartment building.
We had one about 6 inches away from a cow.
And she went out to get it, and then the bull started coming at her because she was wearing red.
Uh-oh.
And the farmer had to run out and rescue her.
And he wanted to take a picture.
So that's latex high-altitude balloons. We can carry up to 6 pounds per payload, total of 12 pounds under the current regulations. We're now going to talk about pico balloons, which is the other end of the weight spectrum. And typically we fly well under an ounce. The nice thing about pico balloons is you can carry a little small tank of helium or hydrogen. So it only uses about 2 cubic feet to inflate one, and as opposed to about 150 for a regular weather balloon. Plus the weather balloon costs over $100. This is a board I developed. I'm giving one of these away as a prize at the conference here, so keep your tickets handy. The small size makes this an ideal STEM project because one person can launch it, provided it doesn't get shot down. And you can see it, it's real easy to fly. And that particular tracker uses flexible solar panels, totally solar powered, and Don has one right there. So we can't afford the weight of batteries. So, and that's about 12.5 grams, less than half an ounce. They float around 40,000 feet or so. And depending on whether you're using helium or hydrogen, hydrogen will fly higher and stay up longer. My first flight went around the world 6 times over a course of 75 days. We still have a payload flying, launched last November from Antarctica with the Bev's call sign. WB4 ELK-7 is still flying over Antarctica after 7 months aloft. And I don't know how many times it's been around the world. This is the 8 pico balloons that Todd launched from Antarctica. And we'll have a talk about that shortly. Now, did the USA Air Force shoot down a hobbyist club balloon? They used my picture in the article, but it wasn't my balloon. There was a K9YO-17, the Northern Illinois Bottle Cap Balloon Brigade. And their last reported transmission at the end of the day was southwest of Alaska. I heard there were news results that so they had shot down a small balloon over the Yukon. So I did this flight path prediction using NOAA high split. And sure enough, the approximate projected location matched the time, the altitude, and the location of where they shot down something with a $450,000 Sidewinder missile. So one of our balloons likely was shot down from the NIBBB group. And they have a number of students and hams in that group. And that balloon had been around the world, I believe, 6 times. So they took them about a week before they finally said, oh, by the way, we think it was a hobbyist club balloon that we shot down. Now, I wanted to warn you that they took a lot of flack for shooting down, you know, a $200 experiment with a $500,000 missile. So I smuggled this picture out. It's top secret, but it's the Air Force's new weapon system for dealing with our pico balloon. I think that'd be pretty effective. All they really had to do was fly close to the balloon and the turbulence would have knocked it out. They didn't have to shoot it with a $500,000 missile. And the odd thing is, they did a search effort in the Yukon. I'm sure they spent $1 million in the winter. How much of a Pico balloon payload do you think would be left after being hit by a Sidewinder missile?
None.
It would just vaporize. So it was just crazy. So we're going to talk now about legislation that has been in the work as a reaction to these balloons. Senators Bud and Mark Kelly, who is former astronaut Mark Kelly, has introduced a Seeing Objects at Altitude Regularly Soar Act. The bill requires the FAA to issue new regulations to require that all high-altitude balloons operating 10,000 feet above sea level be equipped with a tracking system that will transmit the balloon's altitude, identity, and location. Now, the previous version of this wording stated also be able to be received by other aircraft, which would have required you to use an ADS-B transponder.
On a Pico balloon.
On a Pico balloon, the lightest one I could find weighs 21 grams and costs $2,000. And even the people that have flown them on latex weather balloons, they're tricky to set up, they consume a lot of power, and you get a couple pound payload to implement this. So let's hope that it doesn't come to that. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Steve, and stop sharing, and you can bring up the slides showing. You're on, Steve.
Yeah. Okay. Great. I was doing push to talk, but I want to turn on the audio. Let me share a screen.
Steve has done, by way of introduction, Steve has been doing Pico balloons around the world for some time, and he happens to be in the district for Mark Kelly in Arizona, because they wouldn't talk to me because I'm not from Arizona, but he managed to arrange a meeting with one of the aides for Mark Kelly. So go ahead, Steve.
Okay. Do you see slides?
Yes.
Okay, great. We won't dwell on, here, let's do this. We won't dwell on a couple of the introductory slides, but basically this was the Chinese balloon that kind of started this whole thing. And that's it's like 4 kilowatts of arrays underneath this massive super pressure balloon. So it was not just weather related. This was K9YO's sad experience. He was flying an aluminized Mylar balloon. That's something to be noticed because there was one other event that happened where so basically NORAD and the various surveillance radars in the U.S. got rid of their velocity filters. And when they did that, all sorts of things came up. And they were tasked to know what these things are. And after K9YO's incident, and they were somewhat embarrassed, they understood that there were such things as Pico balloons, which they had no idea before. And there was one other incident where they found something that had a radar return, and they checked it out in the Gulf Coast. This was publicized in one of the low circulation defense magazines. They scrambled some planes, and one particular, I think it was an E3 or something. Yeah, there it is. Plus a tanker. So this was, costly just in gas, and it was a Pico balloon out over the Gulf. So both of these were Mylar balloons, silverized. So one thing to note is that both of these, that's a higher radar cross section and it attracts attention. Like the Yokohama balloons don't have that, and they seem not to have been troubled. So you put out something on the Pico Balloons forum saying, hey, let's, this is happening. Let's, can anybody talk to Mark Kelly? And so I reached out to him. So the chronology is that, reached out to him, not much happened as a result of that at the beginning. I talked to a next door neighbor who has some political connections, and he knew somebody at the staff. And after a while, they did respond, give us more information, and we'll schedule this. One thing that is very helpful is we need to have a defined constituency of people that are interested in this. So Arizona has a near space research group. They're very interested in this problem, and they definitely, they do have problems with, they do use ADS-B on occasion, and they were quite vocal about the fact that this is poorly integrated into the ATC system. If you're not a registered aircraft, which the high altitude balloons, they don't have a tail number. So there's a problem even when you do use ADS-B. So we had, and then NASA, MSFC, Bill was on that list of people that we tried to get Senator Kelly's attention with. And so the conference finally happened after some more back and forth correspondence. And so basically the bill, the purpose is they want to have some more awareness in the ATC system of what's up there, and since this is sort of a regulatory approach, the legislatures understand that they aren't the competent people to make the rules, but they want to see that rules are made, and so they established a committee. And so we saw this, and so just to explain then, high altitude balloons were kind of, not part of what ATC was seeing, so they wanted to address that basically. So that's what we have highlighted here. And we noticed that there was something missing in the rulemaking committee, the aviation rulemaking committee. That's the big thing that's defined in the SOAR Act. So we had industry representatives, safety experts, DOD, and the federal agencies like NOAA and others that conduct regular high altitude balloon operations. So what's missing is us, so non-governmental researchers and educators. We didn't want to really just go with the ham radio approach, saying that we're ham radio operators, because that's the method that we use to accomplish communication with it. But what we're doing is these are part of STEM activities, and research is done as well. Bill has some academic papers that have been generated from high altitude research, and some of the people in your conference that are there that introduced themselves before, they're doing research for the government and also not for the government. So we wanted, when we talked to the staffer, he gave us, when the conference happened on March 29th, we got 20 minutes. we have this 20-minute call. Give us what you think ought to be changed. So we made it simple. We need a seat at the table, and so that added category E. And the staffer, Joe Russell, that we talked to, this is under his purview. So each of Senator Kelly's staffers has a sort of a portfolio of various, a segment where he's an expert in. This is Joe Russell's segment. He seemed to think that Mark Kelly would think this is, certainly agreeable with, and that they could add a category E. So let me go a little bit further. And, demonstrating constituency, it was important that we have some people, signed into this communication with Mark Kelly that demonstrated that we're not just a few, eccentric people that like to fly balloons or that would do it for recreation or something like that. We're inspiring kids. We're creating, our next engineers and scientists. In fact, that's why ham radio is around too. I've given talks to school students, and I show them a picture of the FCC allocation, and there are these large segments, and I tell them these large segments that are ham radio, these are parks and rec, basically, where the government says, if you use these segments, you must be playing. You can't do business on these. But electromagnetic spectrum is very valuable. Why would they do that? Why would they take these parks and rec and put them in various spots in the allocations? It's because that's where we're going to get our next internet from and our next scientists from and engineers. It's investment in our seed corn. I'm saying this. I'm preaching to the choir here for all you guys that are there, but at any rate. So this is something important to get across to the legislators. What is likely? Well, first of all, there definitely needs to be some follow-up because this is in process and it needs to not get stuck, lost in a crack somewhere. So there are two things that are going to happen. So this legislation is going to get eventually full. So it's been sent to the House now, and some of the House subcommittees are looking at it and seeing if they want any changes, and eventually they will decide we either like this or don't like this, and then pass it back to the Senate. And during the House subcommittees phase and during the phase where it gets passed back to the Senate, that's where these changes to the bill are going to actually take place. That's where modifications are going to happen. And so we need to track that, and we need to have a way to make sure that our suggestions for input are heard. So there's going to be continuing conversations that need to happen. And shortly, I have a congressman of my own, so I'm a constituent, so I can write to him on the transportation subcommittee, who's in the House, and he's another point of input where we can do the same process of telling them, hey, we're here, we're a constituency, we're not included in this bill, and we need to be. Please help. So I think another Zoom conference is going to be requested, and we had Arizona Near Space Research, and Bill and I were on that conference. It would be very helpful if we had one or two more people. I'm sort of the gateway constituent that gets access to the relevant legislator. If we had somebody like the Boulder Space Sciences, there was somebody who introduced himself there, the gentleman. I didn't get his call sign. If he were to sign up and attend the conference with us, the more we can convince them that we're, a not insignificant constituency, the more likely we're going to get time, because we compete with their time with other interests. So that's important. There's one other thing I should mention. It's in the nuts and bolts of the bill, and I noticed it reviewing the bill, preparing for this talk. So the bill will get passed probably the beginning of next year or the end of this year. It gets folded into a large bill that's the FAA appropriations. So let's say that T is when the bill is finally passed, and it's now an act, and it's passed, it's law. So at T plus 6 months, by that point, the committee has to be formed. But there's one other thing that happens. So the committee then every 6 months produces a report. Hey, this is the progress we've made. But at T plus 2 years, whether or not the committee has made final recommendations or not, an interim standard comes up, and it's a very blunt instrument. It says at T plus 2 years, any high altitude balloon, any balloon at all, PICO or otherwise, you can be tiny, will have to have an ATC transponder, ADS-B basically. So that they put that in there, it seems to be, the logic is clear. They put that in there to sort of prod the committee not to spin their wheels. It's like, okay, you've got these 18 months, do what we ask you to do. And regardless of whatever you do, if there's no final, if you have not made progress here, then our blunt instrument gets implemented as part of the law. I don't know if we want to try and modify that or not. But it's something that we did not address, I think, when we were talking to Joe, the staff member. So let's see. The other thing that we talked to him about, we wanted to make sure that border crossing for light meteorological balloons, which is permitted now, remains permitted. So let's see. That's it. So that's my sort of summary of what the talk was about. So I'm going to unshare now. How do I do that? Here. Let's see. Where's Zoom? Oh, here we are. I need to stop sharing.
There you go. Okay, so basically in a nutshell, when does the committee get formed?
The committee gets formed by, so when the act is passed, the committee has to be staffed within 6 months. And so it's that time frame that they'll be looking for the people to populate the committee. And we need to make sure that when the act is passed, it has that seat at the table for us.
Okay. And you mentioned the weight limit. We want to make sure that that's not reduced from 6 pounds to 0.
Yeah. I had that picture of Mark Kelly in the plane that he sometimes flies to the events. So the reason I had that in there is because I have a feeling that weight limit is going to be modified. And I'm just wondering if what is going to give Mark Kelly heartburn is that the weight is such that it wouldn't hurt that little Cessna plane that he flies. So, you know, a frozen chicken, or not? No, it's not frozen. It's a refrigerated chicken, a fryer. That's the standard test that they use for the engines and the cockpit windows. That's gonna do some damage to, you know, smaller aircraft. I have a feeling it's not going to be 4 pounds anymore, but you know, but it has to not be 0. Right. So that, yeah, and that's what the guy in that chair is gonna. That's one of his jobs, is to you know, convince people what's safe and what's not. You know, and now you're a safety engineer. You'd be the perfect guy for that.
Well, I remember they were testing a jet window in Great Britain, and they borrowed our chicken gun from the United States, and they said every time we shoot it at it, it blasts it out. And finally, the engineer here said, "Did you thaw the chicken out first?"
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, great, Steve. We appreciate your feedback on that, and keep us in the loop for future legislation.
Ask them to tell us what that Senate bill number is.
Oh, what's the Senate bill number?
It's, I believe it's 816.
816?
Yeah, it used to be 818, but it has since changed, and now it's 816.
That's okay. S, not 816.
Okay.
816, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And Greg, you want to say a few words about what you've been working on?
Yeah.
We're going to run over a little time here, so Mark, hang in there. We'll get to you.
Mark, I'll probably want to talk to you down the road. I'll get Bill to contact us. So there is another bill out that don't directly impact the balloon community, but it is Senate Bill 1631.
I actually have that.
I can get it called up. Anyway, so it's yeah, that's from it right there. No, it's not 51.
What is it?
Oh, okay. Well, maybe they changed the number on it. 31. 1631. But you got the right people on it introduced it, and that's the name of the bill.
Okay, I may have
typo. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So you can track these bills if you have this bill number on. That's why I was asking Steve the bill number. I was chairman of the policy committee of the National Space Society for 10 years, and prior to that, you know, so we put a lot of legislation through, and we ran the halls of Congress and done a lot of that kind of stuff. Also, I've got an organization called the Freedom Restoration Foundation. You go to that .org, freedomrestorationfoundation.org, and go to the Action Center page. Scroll past all the alerts. They're all old. I need a new webmaster. We go scroll toward the bottom, not all the way. There is a litany, a list of how to contact your state legislators, contact your congressmen, your senators, how to figure out who they are, how to track bills in state legislatures, how to track bills in the Senate, the House, and there's emails, there's phone number, there's one switchboard number you can reach the House or the Senate with, which you press 1, I think, for the Senate and 2 for the House, but anyway, you can talk to an operator. So there's a lot of assets, and they're on that page. And finally, they're kind of all put together for how to track bills, how to contact your local and state and federal senators and people like that, and congressmen. So that's what you need to do. Y'all need to get involved in this directly if you want to have a voice. And let me tell you something. A little voice makes a big difference. Because for every person that contacts them, they get hear from so few people, they consider that to be worth 1,000 votes. Now, it used to be 100, now it's more like 1,000, because people just, you know, they think they have no effectivity. You do. As Chairman of the Policy Committee of the National Space Society, we had major impacts on space legislation. I mean, major impacts. We were just a grassroots organization, guys. You're a grassroots organization, you can do the same thing. And just by writing a paper on the military threat of Chinese balloons. I'm not talking spy balloons. I'm talking from an EMP, electromagnetic pulse standpoint. We got the attention of Senator Ron Johnson. He is the Republican lead on that Homeland Security Committee in the Senate. We got to Mark Green, the chair of the Homeland Security Committee in the House. And they claim that was part of the instigation from the past to Senate Bill 1631. But essentially, that's really just a UAS bill. So the bill is safeguarding the homeland from threats posed by aircraft, Unmanned Aircraft Systems Act. And essentially, the bill authorizes the Department of Security Administration to proactively protect transportation infrastructure from drone threats. And it authorizes the DHS and the DOD to use its existing authorities to protect critical infrastructure. The legislation allows state and local enforcement and critical infrastructure owners, law enforcement, and operators, and I'm talking like airports here, to use drone detection technology has been authorized by the DHS. So this is really drone, ain't for drones. They thought it could cover balloons too. What I'm interested in is stuff they're gonna have to do out at sea. I mean, just don't even cover it. So I'm gonna have to work with the stuff I'm pushing separate from this. And one of the things I did include in my white paper that I wrote, and also I did a PowerPoint presentation on it, and I went into great detail sizing these and showing the justifications, where I even did a design of an EMP balloon. I showed you how you could design a balloon and put a nuke on it, and how to run a mission to attack America, because this is something the Chinese already know. I'm trying to get it across to the dunderheads in the Senate and the House and other people to wake them up. But it's too easy to do. It's too easy to do. So the thing that I was trying to get across there is that there are certain size limits below which you're not going to have a valid target. And if it's like basically 40 foot or the size of a bus at 50,000 feet, that's about the minimum size that you're going to take anything worthwhile to do a major attack on the United States with. And if you get it up to 100,000 feet, about 2 bus sizes. And so, because they were measuring that Chinese bus, a balloon bus sizes, so that's why I use that example. It's basically 40 to 50 feet in diameter kind of size ranges. And so I show all that in the paper, but I need other criteria and I need some language on these tracking systems. So I need to work with you and Steve to kind of drive that a little further home, because I want to help y'all, because I don't want to see this community impacted, because you ain't got nothing to do with the kind of balloons that I'm concerned with. So that's my
well, that you know of.
That I know of. Freedom Restoration Foundation. A lot of words. .org. Now that's outside the world of lunaticking. That's my favorite lunatic here. But anyway, so it's
I thought I was your favorite.
Oh yeah, you are. I just need him first. I got a lot of lunatic friends of Margaret back there. So yeah, we used to launch rockets from these balloons, rockets that could hit the edge of space. We got the Guinness Book of World Records for one we did in '97. Although they kept the date wrong. They said it's '98, 11 May 1997. And 25 years ago, this coming Tuesday is the anniversary of our Halo SL2 rocket, which hangs in the Straight Ale Brewery right now in downtown. So if you go in there and look to the left, you'll see one of our rockets. These were not small rockets.
These are raccoons. They're rockets launched from a large balloon.
Yeah, like 300-pound payloads on balloons. We used the polyethylene thing. We were way beyond latex. But we did fly a lot of latex balloons to fly in our subsystems and test equipment until we needed to fly bigger test equipment. So we generated a lot of UFO stories.
Oh yeah,
and had a lot of hunts in deliverance country for balloon packing. So. All right, that's all I got to say. FreedomRestorationFoundation.org. Go to the Action Center page. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff to do with political stuff. But go to the Action Center page and scroll down, and there you can find how to make the contacts.
What page? One more time.
Freedom Restoration Foundation.org. Dashboard organization that says, hey, we've lost too much freedom. We need them back. Not a freedom preservation organization. It says, give it back to us. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Surprised the FBI could knock on your door since you wrote a white paper on how to do the EFM attacks in America.
Oh, I just did a video showing how they can take out dams and stuff easy. And
yeah,
actually, I'm a member of this. Was it InfraGuard, which is like a civilian auxiliary to the FBI. But I've done videos critical as crap on the FBI too, so I'm surprised they ain't knocking on the door.
Yeah, exactly.
They probably won't.
Red flag laws, watch out.
All right. Thank you, Greg.